Okay. One of the last things we discussed, I believe, was in order to really generate compassion for others, closeness is important. How do we get close to others? Or maybe asked in a different way, why do we not feel close to others? And if we feel close to some, why is that? Yeah. And again, as I said before, because of our obsession with the I and mine, the distance between ourselves and others is enhanced. Anyway, so that closeness that is actually naturally there, it's just not obvious to us, right? Okay, but what do you think? What do you think? Why do we not feel close to others? I mean, especially those we've totally, there's like, it seems to be like a huge distance, as in like, no way I would ever want to be around them. What is the reason for that?
Probably because they are not doing something that is useful to us.
Okay, they don't do anything that is useful to us. Okay, fair enough. Maybe even further, they do something that harms us. Even worse than that. What else?
We don't take the time to think about it.
Pardon?
We don't take the time to think about it.
Yeah, we don't take time to think about it. That too. Like, I have a couple more important things to do. Right? Yeah, we don't think about it. That's true. Yeah, it's not important. I've got my friends, I've got my family, I'm good. Right, it's true. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just not part of my character, right? It's not just part of my personality, but why is it not? Why is it not part of my... Sometimes one thing that is often, that people often mention is, their suffering is not mine. First of all, like, what do I, like, they're different. They don't, it very often goes back to, I don't experience what they experience. So of course it's also true, we don't care, like life is busy. Now with the internet, we're more busy, less time, more time spent, I don't know, surfing, I don't know, going online and so forth. But not just that. Even if we understood, psychologically, it's just better for us to have that closeness. Yes?
It's also protection.
Protection, ah. Oh yeah. That's an interesting one. It's protecting ourselves. If we get too close to certain people, we may feel vulnerable. Their influence, maybe their negativity could influence us. Oh, okay.
And also, I mean, in the sense of feeling the suffering of others,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know. It's like protection because there is so much suffering.
Ah, again, what we discussed this morning, because there's so much suffering, so if we think too much about it, it's just depressing. Yeah, okay. Okay. Anything else? Those are huge. I mean, we had this discussion this morning, okay, becoming more aware of impermanence, but the thing is, like, one thing I said, and that was kind of the conclusion I came to, well, if we were to do it more often, we wouldn't. You know, it's like when you're a doctor, you imagine the worst kind of diseases, the worst kind of difficulties, and I mean, although they say in the medical profession you shouldn't have too much empathy, but I'm wondering whether or not the best doctors are those that have more empathy. I mean, of course, you need to protect yourself to be able to be effectively working for others, but I could imagine, just from hearing what my friends and relatives back home, for instance, would say, oh, he's such a good doctor. He really knows what I'm talking about, really kind of, they don't say that he puts himself or she puts himself into my shoes, but it seems like just that sensitivity, that openness, right? It's not just, oh, another patient, like I'm in a factory kind of thing, but a lot more, empathy, I guess, for lack of a better word. So these are definitely good doctors. But the problem is here, if I say to generate more empathy and such that it doesn't harm us, we need to do it, but we don't do it in the first place, so then it's kind of like you're stuck in this cycle. I don't want to do it because I want to protect myself, but since I'm not doing it, I don't have the ability, I can't face it, I just can't do it. Yeah. And of course, we're busy, and of course, but the thing is, like, what am I busy with? What is it that takes up so much more time? Is that more important? I mean, it goes back to our instinctive wish to have, or intuitive, instinctive wish to have lasting happiness. If we were like, okay, short-term happiness, I'm fine, you know, I keep changing the object, I keep changing, I have to keep moving, otherwise. So if you have that attitude, but I think sooner or later, I think if you're younger, that's much more like, all right, let's just change, let's go here and there and party a little bit, like let's not stay too long, you know, don't have enough attention to be able to do it. But maybe also if you grow older, it's a bit like, ugh, you know, want some stability. I'm wondering, at some point you just want it to, I mean, people start settling down with the same people, you know, there is a change. First you fool around, have lots of boyfriends, girlfriends and stuff, and then at some point it's like, nope, I want to, well, maybe not exactly in India, but I don't know. But, you know, like in the West, that's pretty much, yeah, like now my nieces and nephews, I mean, yeah, it's not that seen as so strange. And then at some point, you calm down, you want to find a job that you like to do, have your own home, right? Want something lasting. Isn't that true? Do you agree that at some point you want just something, you want some stability, security? You want something, yeah, that lasting thing. So I did already mention that in the Buddhist texts, it does emphasize the next life a lot. But first of all, if you don't believe in reincarnation, it's really not helpful. Secondly, this life is also important, very important. In fact, I think we have a personal responsibility to be well, to be happy. When I say happy, like to experience inner peace. Because we are so much more helpful to others if we are calm and peaceful and have a certain sense of well-being, like happiness. Because if we're the opposite, sad and depressed, we won't have the energy to do much, right? So to be a productive member of society, and productive, I'm not talking about producing a lot of cars or whatever, no, but productive in the sense of benefiting others in whichever way I can, then it's very important to be well. Because not to be well, in the sense of to be happy. Now, this is almost like saying you're not allowed to be depressed. No. That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. I mean, we have depression at times, we feel miserable. That's just normal. But then, also for the benefit of others, to find satisfaction and inner peace is definitely a good thing. But then I learned something which I wasn't even aware of. Actually, it happened in Israel. I talked about, you know, this well-being, inner peace, and I found out that, and this is definitely not unique to Israel, that some people would say, I would feel guilty to feel happy when there's so much suffering around. How can I feel happy if there's so much unhappiness around? That's not okay. Wow, that was interesting, right? It's a cultural thing, but seeing from your faces, it seems it's not unique to Israel. There seems to be a common thing. So it's almost like a selfish person, they're just happy and they don't care kind of thing, right? And then if you're a little bit less selfish, then you mustn't be happy. Not too happy. That's not fair because there's so much suffering. Interesting idea, isn't it? That would be like saying, I can't have a certain amount of money because there's so many who don't have as much. But somehow that doesn't apply. Isn't that interesting? That doesn't seem to apply when it comes to the amount of money. Oh, I should just give away a little bit because I'm a little bit more than average. Or I have too many possessions because there are a lot who don't. Maybe that doesn't apply. Anyway, I'm just wondering here, yeah. So first of all, well, about this happiness, I still feel, I mean, look around. People like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's inspiring because he's got that jolliness, that lightheartedness. Yeah, it's not like a heavy-hearted kind of like, oh, I'm so depressed, but I'm smiling anyway. No. And many of these great lamas, I mean, Lamas of Rinpoche and so many other lamas, they're so light. They don't take things so seriously. Something terrible happens to them, and they can still laugh about it. Lamas of Rinpoche had a stroke, very debilitating. Remember? He couldn't speak initially, he couldn't move. And I know what that's like because my dad had one and still suffers from the consequences, still can't speak. My father can't talk. For the last 20 years, he hasn't been able to speak or to move, to get up and walk, because of the stroke. So it's terrible. But Lama Rinpoche made fun of himself rather than, and it's inspiring, isn't it? Is it inspiring, or do you feel like, oh, it should not be so happy, that's just, he should feel a little less happy because so many people are miserable? No, but it's that lightheartedness, like being in his presence, it's almost contagious. Yeah, if someone is really, you feel it from that they're not pretending, they truly don't take suffering as seriously, they live according to this very important verse by Shantideva. If there's a remedy, if there's a problem and there's a remedy, why worry? If there's a problem and there is no remedy, what's the point in worrying? I mean, Tibetans are pretty much living according to that principle. Like, they don't get easily depressed, right? They don't easily, because they feel, okay, I can't change it, so why worry? Make the best out of it. That seems naive to some people, but in modern psychology, that's called positive thinking. It is, isn't it? Well, look at the bright side of things. Of course, if I try to make changes as long as possible, but if I cannot, how can I utilize this situation in a positive way? Right? Should I allow myself to fall into a deep depression and stop getting up in the morning and stop eating? Is that a solution to the problem? No, that's adding, more trouble to the actual trouble, and certainly doesn't help us to deal with it. Therefore, I believe to learn this, to face whatever there is, good or bad, and accept the good for what it is. It's not going to last. The moment it arises, it's already changing, but the same applies to the bad. Right? And what does that help? What does that develop? A very important psychological quality. What is that called? Resilience. Pardon? Resilience, exactly. Resilience. Very important psychological quality. Resilience. Because the stuff life is going to throw at us, we don't know what's going to come. But if you're ready, and the thing is, like, something quite funny. When I first came to McLeodganj, to Dharamshala, remember I told you, I was like after high school, I didn't know a thing. And I met the first Tibetans I met, and I thought, they're like rocks. They're like rocks. They're so unemotional. They don't feel anything. Why? Because I was such an emotional yo-yo. And in comparison to me, they seemed without emotion. But then I realized over some time that my emotional response is totally unrealistic. Something great happens and I go, oh my gosh, how awesome, how amazing. Like totally exaggerated because of my sense it's going to last. But the first moment it arises, it's already changing. Right? I mean, whatever it is, even if you get a lot of money, you go, wow, and then a day or two, and it's like, oh, big deal. It's not special any longer. We get bored of it. Or we lose the money anyway, or whatever else happens. Someone says something incredibly kind to me, but that's it, they say it, I don't even know why, and they said it, and that's gone. And if it's not even true, well, they were just plainly wrong. So the thing is, like, we go like, whoa, it's truly there and permanently, no. And then something bad happens, and oh my God, right? Oh no. But you know, there is a problem, there is an issue, and the moment it arises, it's already changing. There is that moment of, oh no. But then it changes. And we have this tendency to see things just from one perspective. Problem, right? The moment you call it challenge, it's different. If you look at it or you think of it as a challenge, it's different. You call it problem, well then that's what it becomes. That's the power of our own mind, right? But if we have a tendency to always see the negative, of course, we're going to see that as a problem, and then everything else becomes a problem. Challenge. It goes even further than that. It goes even further than that. This takes us right into emptiness again. So is it a problem in and of itself? Well, it's not. It's neither a problem, nor a challenge, nor anything else. From its own side, it's nothing. Just a situation, something arises, right? But it's neither positive, negative. It's in relation to what we do with it. That's it. Now, let's take birth and death. So usually we think birth, it's good. Death is bad, right? Very clear. We're raised that way, we are conditioned that way. Birth is always good. We spoke about like pregnancy, that really sucks, and birth itself is painful, but fortunately the mother doesn't really remember, at least the memory is such that it doesn't turn into a trauma, so you do it all over again. So that's all okay, and the child doesn't remember, so it's all okay. And then everyone is like, birth, a new member of the family, everyone is so happy. And then death is bad. But really, when you think about it, every moment is a birth and a death. Every single day when we go to sleep, it's the death of that day and the birth of a next day. In fact, when we fall asleep, the process of dying is pretty similar. What happens when we fall asleep is very similar to the process of death. How the consciousness becomes subtler, then there's a dream state, and then we wake up again. There's a whole literature just about that. What happens with the energy in the body, what happens with the subtler mind, and so forth. It's so fascinating, this whole area. But anyway, every day there's death and birth happening, right? Every moment there is. Every moment is the end of one moment and the beginning of a new moment. So the moment that is the end of what was before is also the beginning of something new. It's just a different perspective. Looking at it from the point of view of what was, it's the end. Looking at it from the point of view of what is to come, it's the beginning. Every moment. And actually, birth is the end of your previous life. What was before is the end of that. So you leave behind something else. But you're also getting a new family. You're leaving behind one family, you're gaining a new one. Death is the same. It's the end of one thing, but the beginning of something new. Okay, we haven't really discussed reincarnation, but let's just go with that for now. Right? So every day, and we just focus in on one aspect and believe that to be truly there. So much unnecessary suffering. I labeled it a problem, that's what it becomes. I label it something else, and I'm not saying you start labeling and you call cows dogs one day and then that's crazy. No, it's still within in what's realistic, right? I mean, calling a problem a challenge, it's not unrealistic. In fact, that's something His Holiness the Dalai Lama once said. He once made a very beautiful statement. I don't know whether you've heard about it. Some years ago, he was asked by a reporter, kind of saying, well, look, if you look back onto your life, and it was already even a few years ago, he had already spent a lot of life, so, you know, a lot of years, a lot of experiences. And the reporter asked him, if you look back onto your life, what were the best times in your life? Do you know what His Holiness said? What do you think? Huh? Means?
Right now.
No. He didn't even say right now. No, he didn't say right now. What did His Holiness say?
The difficult times?
The most difficult times I had. The most difficulties I had in my life, they were the best times. So what? That's the opposite of what we would usually say, right? That's the opposite. We think the best times we had, the happiest times, with the least problems. But he said, no. Because as long as there are problems, and of course the goal is to overcome problems in the long term, but in the meantime, it's such that they help us to grow. Problems help us to grow. It helps us to learn more about ourselves. What are our weaknesses? What are our strengths? Where do we have to still work on? What work still needs to be done? And some of the greatest lamas, they embrace problems. They're very helpful for other people around because of the way they very skillfully deal with issues. So it's an inspiration to everyone else. I mean, when the Tibetans lost their country, this was a huge trauma. It's not long ago, and yeah, there's still books and documentaries about it, but you know, the more time passes, the less it becomes really, it is an issue nowadays. I mean, Tibetans still suffer from having lost their country, but at that time, oh my God, people died. They died like crazy. I mean, they arrived here and they got these crazy illnesses they never had before. Crazy in the sense that they didn't have the bacteria and viruses in Tibet. And they had no money. They had to build, many of the roads from Manali apparently were built by Tibetans, and they died, many of them there. So His Holiness had this responsibility for all his people. And they came to see him, and they were crying, and so many problems, so many difficulties. I don't know whether you ever read the book Ama Ade, but you have to be pretty strong to be able to read that book. Wow, this is one of the worst stories I've ever read, about this lady who was a freedom fighter. She lived in Dharamshala for many years in McLeodganj. She was tough as nails. She was probably already in her 80s, maybe early 90s. She had huge fingers, so strong, walking around, like really, she was really tough. And she, anyway, she fought against the Chinese and was imprisoned. I think it was 30 years. And of these 30 years, I believe, at least 25 years, she never had a shower. She never changed her clothes. Wasn't allowed to. Can you imagine? Can you imagine for so many years being in the same clothes? They almost starved to death. They got so little food that she said there was a time when within 2 months, about 10,000 prisoners died. And they would wake up, there were no mattresses, nothing. They just lay on the bare ground, sub-zero temperature, so extremely cold. And you'd wake up in the morning and there'd be like corpses lying next to you. Such was the situation. So many Tibetans, 1.2 million Tibetans got killed in that time. That's within a short time, that's a lot of people, considering they only think they're around 6 million altogether. And His Holiness had all the responsibility for everyone. Incredible, right? All that heaviness. But being aware of, this is changing, this is the situation right now, it'll change again. So it didn't throw me into a deep depression, but rather got his energy going. I need to do something. I need to be there for my people. And sometimes we have the sense anger is a good thing because it's very powerful. It can make us stand up against an enemy and defend our family. But there's something that is even more powerful, which is compassion. And one of the examples, I think, is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He has so much energy that, especially when he was younger, the people working for him had to work in shifts. They couldn't hold up and keep up with him because there's all this energy. There's more people to be met, more suffering, more people who have arrived from Tibet. And if you think about it, if there's really no concern for I, me, and mine, just a sense of responsibility driven by compassion for the Tibetans, that's his main responsibility in this case, but not just because he's a Tibetan and therefore he wants to just care for Tibetans. No, realizing that the Tibetans have something very important to offer to the world, which is Buddhist psychology. Something really, really important. Buddhist culture, Buddhist religion, it's so important for the world. And it needs to be preserved for all of our benefits. So that kept him running and working, and incredible. The schedule of His Holiness, Sunday, Saturday, I mean, forget about it. But did he get sick and unwell? No, he didn't. Striving. He was, the energy, the way His Holiness spoke, especially when he was younger, so fast, full of energy, and always in movement, and always, because this compassion driving him to be there for other people. So it wasn't ADHD or something. It was like, and when it was necessary to be with people and to be calm and just listen, that's what he did. So these examples are really most beneficial, actually, to understand why would I want to be compassionate? Why would I want to feel close to all sentient beings? Do I want to be this person, I walk into the room and people feel better? Or do I want to just be a selfish jerk who makes a lot of money and dies miserably? To do it then all over again. Right? That's the question. And you know, with reincarnation, there are a lot of reasonings that are given for reincarnation, a lot. The continuum of the mind and so forth, and we'll discuss this. But I personally find there's a very convincing argument about for reincarnation. I find that very convincing. And that argument is, look at some of the lamas. For instance, His Holiness. He was separated, talk about the kibbutz, how many people were separated. His Holiness was separated from his family at a very young age. Taken out of the family with many siblings. Put on a throne. Revered by all these people. He had to give all these blessings. Put into monk's robes. Put into a huge house. His playmates were sweepers. No real toys, maybe a few toys that were given to him. And study and discipline. Which child wouldn't break? Which ordinary child? I mean, probably be in therapy until the rest of their life. Think about it. From a pedagogical point of view, and his siblings, some of them were high lamas, some of them weren't, they didn't undergo the same thing, and they also didn't become that amazing. So unless His Holiness was already amazing, where does that come from? Any other ordinary person would have broken. If you read his life story, wow. I mean, he's taken away from his family at that age. I mean, you know, like parents who like for their children to be successful, and at the age of 2, they put them in front of a camera, and they usually they don't fare well. But instead of His Holiness, not only did His Holiness not develop a drug problem and deep depression, no, he rose above any expectations, right? Maybe the time is a little bit now, His Holiness is older and we don't really, but like when I first came here, His Holiness was a superstar in the world, right? He really was. A lot of movies, when they just say the Dalai Lama, they just mention the Dalai Lama, at least that much, you know. And the thing is, a lot of people, like when His Holiness came somewhere, tens of thousands would come together. Although he looked strange, the way His Holiness dresses, like I do, it's very strange, comes from a very different cultural background. And you know, even my stepma, who's so anti-religious, oh, she's super anti-religious. She's a really lovely person, but after the Second World War, she was very suspicious of anyone having the same haircut and the same uniform. Wearing the same, right? Kind of like a uniform, right? And she's like, why do you all have to dress the same? Why do you have to cut your hair? And this is all bullshit. And then one day I said to her, well, she wanted me to say something about Buddhism. And I said, well, we all want to be happy. And she's like, no, I don't want to be happy. That was it, right? So I don't want anything with Buddhism. This doesn't. And then His Holiness came to Hamburg, and the organizers invited actually my family to come. I came from India, and they came, and she listened to what His Holiness said, every word. His Holiness spoke about emptiness, and she was like, that made so much sense. I didn't say, I told you. I kept quiet. And then my father actually had an audience because of his stroke, but she was there, and she was crying. I still have the video. She's crying. She was so overwhelmed by His Holiness's presence. So here's a person who never wanted anything to do with Buddhism, who thought it was all, and she meets His Holiness and things are very different. There's so many wonderful stories of His Holiness. Maybe this is a good time to tell them. I'll tell you at least two. In Germany, there is a comedian. I like the story. He's a really funny comedian. He's actually really good. He does crazy stuff. He dressed up as the Dutch Queen once. He's a guy, but he dressed up like the Dutch Queen. It didn't exactly look like her, but the dress was similar. And the accent was so good that he drove in a car and he was doing this kind of like the Queen thing. I'm not sure, people were like confused. Is this the Dutch Queen? So it's like a huge thing on German television, pretending to be the Queen. But there's lots of other things. He's really, really funny. He's just a really funny guy. I know little of him because I left Germany at some point, and so I never really saw much of him, but little I know from online stuff. And then not so long ago, a book by him came out, and it became clear why he became a comedian. He came from a worker family, from a just very simple family with close-knit ties in the community, but his mother suffered from debilitating depression. She was depressed, terribly depressed. And at the time, they didn't do much about it, didn't know about it, but he always tried to cheer up his mom. So he turned into a comedian. He learned to make his mom laugh. He was really, really close to her, but at the age of 11, she killed herself. She committed suicide. And for him, that was so terrible because he always felt she didn't even say goodbye. One day, she just, I forget how she killed herself, but she did. And it was terrible. And for him, that was such a big pain that he hadn't spoken about. But in this book, it becomes clear that he had this incredible pain. So the death of his mom was something that stayed with him for a long time. Anyway, as he says in his book, one day he was with a group of journalists, I don't know why, and they said, oh, the Dalai Lama is in town. So people go to see him. Do you want to join us? You know, they all asked. Some of them were writing about His Holiness, so they took their journalist friends to go to, and he'd agreed. Said, sure, why not? Had no idea who he really was. And so everyone walked towards His Holiness, and I remember reading, I only read that one chapter about meeting His Holiness. So he offered a kata, and His Holiness said to him, and His Holiness had no idea who he was. Trust me, I mean, you don't know who he is. Hapakerkeling? No, No one. That's his name. No one knows. Not even Swiss or Austrians usually know about him. So he's only well known in Germany. So His Holiness definitely doesn't know who's Harper Kerkeling. Anyway, so he walks up to His Holiness, and what did His Holiness say? It's terrible to lose your mother. Our mother's very dear to us. I also lost my mother, and it still pains me. And he said something broke in him. He started crying and crying. He said he didn't stop crying for 2 weeks, and then he was okay. Wow. I would never know what to say to Harper Kerkeling, especially if I have not read his book. I would never know. But he knew exactly this deep pain in this person's mind. And he addressed it. And he addressed it in such a way that it came up. Yeah, there was some crying for some time. But then he worked through it. Wow. How often do we find ourselves with other people? We know they have a problem. We just don't know what to say to them. Then there is another story. Once I remember when His Holiness gave a teaching, I wasn't translating at the time, so that must have been before 2015. So I just sat with everyone else in the temple area, and next to me was a lady, a woman. I was actually with a friend, and there was this woman. She looked so sad. You know, we're all like jolly and talking and chatting, like in the break time. No, couldn't chat with her. And she was so sad. She looked, you could tell, she was so deeply sad. But she was just one in the crowd, and if I hadn't sat next to her, I wouldn't have noticed. And the thing is, I don't remember when I found out what her problem was. But certainly no one else did. And then someone told us later on that she had just lost her son in a motorbike accident. It was so raw. And she was there, and you could tell she was close to tears. And when His Holiness went back, suddenly he goes into the crowd, goes towards her, and gives her the biggest hug. Wow. Why? Of all these different people. He made her day. Right? I mean, she was crying afterwards and, you know, all that. But he made her day. Isn't that beautiful? And there are so many stories like that. These are the stories that I know of myself, and so many other people have stories of where His Holiness goes up to a person and makes a huge difference. Then there's one scary story. You want to hear a scary story? His Holiness scary? Where he did someone a huge favor, but it wasn't obvious to us. This is many, many years ago. It was so many years ago that I had a friend, a nun from Australia, who unfortunately passed away later on. But she was quite young. She was only in her 20s, but she had a tumor. They found a tumor in her head. But she was still alive. She was with me at the time. We were at the teachings. So that must have been the 90s, the early 90s. And we were downstairs. It wasn't like that. Like, it wasn't the same way it's now. They didn't have as many roofs. There was only one space that had a roof. So I sat there, and upstairs it was raining very hard. It was in March when His Holiness gave long teachings. His Holiness used to give at least 2 weeks of Losar teachings, morning and afternoon. 2 weeks straight on some topic. Incredible teachings. Well, the recordings are still around. Anyway, March is often the time, they sometimes call it the little monsoon. It's when it's very cold and it may rain for a few days. So this was one of those really rainy days. They had already screens, so even though they sat downstairs, upstairs they didn't have all this roofing, all the covers, so there was not enough space to sit when it was raining. So I was downstairs, I saw on the television, I saw His Holiness, and I sat next to my friend, and we were all cold, and yeah, it was the rain, it was pretty cold. And suddenly His Holiness said, so he was teaching very calmly, the way he does, and suddenly he said, "You, get up." My friend and I were both like, "Oh, me?" No, obviously His Holiness couldn't see us, but still we were like in shock. And the camera is going like, doesn't know where to, right? So where's His Holiness? His Holiness pointed at someone to His Holiness's left side, to His Holiness left. He kept pointing, "Get up, get up." And so the camera is now moving and going, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Can't see, because the person was hiding. And eventually it was a monk. It turned out to be a monk. So someone said, get up, get up, get up, leave. I never, ever experienced, I never saw anything like that. Not until that moment, and never since. So the bodyguards had to actually force him to get up because he was trying to hide. He said, you leave, you go. And he left. Oh, that was so scary. That was so scary. But he did this monk a big favor, as we found out. Because we were wondering, what did he do? Was he nodding off? Oh, many nod off, so not a big deal. He was wearing long sleeve, no big deal. A lot of people were wearing long sleeves, although traditionally, we couldn't come up with anything. What was different from him? And then what happened was, he actually came from one of the big monasteries in the south, Nganden Monastery. And if something like that happens to you, His Holiness, if he publicly does that to someone, there's a reason. And they knew that. So he had left the monastery to go to the teachings in MacLeodganj, and they thought, okay, we need to investigate. And they broke the lock of his room. They broke the lock to look inside, what's going on. And they found he had stolen a lot of things. He was no longer a monk. He had broken his vow. You're not allowed to steal something from someone else if it could get you in trouble with the police. And what he had stolen was too valuable. It was not a pencil or a stone or whatever. No, this was money and new shoes and at that time tape recorders. So objects of certain value, he had stolen it from other monks. He had stolen these things from other monks. And so he was no longer a monk. He had broken his root vow. That's one of the root vows. You're no longer a monk. But by still pretending you are a monk, you're accumulating so much non-virtue. You're getting offerings from people. Like when you're in the temple, you're getting food that's for the monk. They give a little money offering so you can cover your expenses. He got all that. And he continued to just pretend he was a monk. He was harming himself. And I guess, what are you going to do to him? He's not going to listen. I mean, he had no shame. He still showed up. So that one thing, and he left, and he took off his robes pretty soon after that and lived as a layperson. So it seems pretty rough and tough and cruel, but in the long term, he did that person a favor, right? I mean, the person left, and I don't know where they're gone now. I have no idea. I didn't even see the person. I see this monk, but yeah, unfortunately, he harmed himself greatly, others as well, but mainly himself. But His Holiness put a stop to that harm. Yeah? So, and the compassionate being is not like a cuddly teddy bear. No, His Holiness can be very, very direct and very, if it's required. So compassion can be very tough. And, mothers and fathers, parents have to be sometimes very tough to discipline their children. Like, don't walk on the street, pull them back. That seems very violent, but you want them rather to be pulled back than being hit by a car, right? So all this gives us a bit of a sense what all this is about. Do you want to help people with their problems, not harming themselves in an effective way through your example? So just bring people some happiness and inspiration through your words, teaching in this way, teaching us certain methods, how we can improve our mind. And of course, through instructions, sometimes gentle, sometimes tough. Yeah, tough love. Do you want to be like that? Or just enjoy, short-term happiness, use up all your positive karma, because unless you've accumulated the positive potential to have these happy experiences, you won't have them. And then die and do it all over again? Well, up to you. Pick and choose, right? I personally feel, well, life is short. There's another one, but I don't know what's going to come. I want to be better prepared. And I want to be like a Thomas. I want to be more loving, more compassionate, not so self-obsessed, because I've done this for so long and still not found any lasting happiness. And sometimes people say, well, it's so difficult. Buddhist practice is so hard. Oh, it takes so much time and discipline. Well, I think samsara is harder. What's the option? What's the option? To stay in the state we're in right now, remain in that same state, and then anything could happen to us, right? We could be killed any moment. We could lose our limbs. We don't know what, right? What's going to happen? What is our karma? What is going to ripen? We don't know in the future. Do we have all the freedoms and opportunities we have in this life? Or we're reborn in a terrible part of this planet with no freedom to choose our religion, no freedom to choose what we want to do. Right now, we have all the opportunities. We can choose. We have certain freedoms. And Buddhism is all about freedom. Freedom to do the things we want to do in such a way that we find lasting happiness. And the thing is, it can only happen if we stop being so self-obsessed, and if instead we work for the benefit of others in the same way as we work towards our own benefit. That's the only way. And I've said this before, if you have just a tiny moment of incredible love for all sentient beings, in that moment you have no problem. In that moment you have no single problem. Think, you just thinking, all sentient beings, may they be happy, may I bring them happiness. What is there to worry about? In that moment, your reputation, your success, it's not an issue, right? So, but what's the first step? How do we get there? Closeness. How do we generate closeness? Well, there are two methods. One method deals with the past. One method deals with the present. The future maybe a little bit as well. But yes, one method deals with the past. There is, in a way, a third method. It's not a third method, but there's also other ways to think. But yes, one deals with the past. And it's said to be the easier method, but for us it's a little harder. Okay, for two reasons, harder. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Some of you? No, okay. Well, the first method is sometimes described as 6 causes and 1 effect. 6 causes and 1 effect. Okay, never mind the 6 causes for now, but this is a method where we start off thinking we have lived before. Our mind continues from one life to the next, has existed since beginning this time. It's a continuum in that material objects cannot become mental, and mental objects cannot become material. So the brain, of course, is important, no doubt. In the Buddhist scriptures, it is mentioned as a very important part of our body, also very much related to our mind, but not identical, because our brain is not that experiencing entity. The experiencing entity is the mind. The mind is the experiencing entity. It's our consciousness that experiences. And nowadays, luckily, we have situations such as near-death experiences or comas, when the brain activity of the person is either non-detectable or so minor that it doesn't seem to allow for any mental activity. And still, later on, people come back, near-death experience, they come back from that. Likewise, people wake up from comas and tell crazy stories. In fact, they talk about leaving their body and wandering the halls of the hospital. And I remember just lately I've been watching some of these documentaries about that, where a lady said, well, I was traveling down the hall, and then there was my sister, and she was talking to the doctor, and the doctor had a stain on his tie, and they were talking about what I was doing, and later on she recalled everything, right? And the doctor was like, yeah, there was a stain on my tie. Actually, the sister hadn't noticed, but she had noticed, and she was able to say, you talked about such, and this is, she was brain dead. But she had all this perception of what was going on. She saw what was happening between her and the doctor. In another situation, the person talks about something similar, how her mind left the body, and she saw her whole relatives and how one tried to get something from a vending machine and it didn't work, and then he got frustrated, and then someone else cried, and she was like, you did such and such, and you did such and such, and they were like, who told you? And she's like, no, I saw all of you. I saw what you were saying. I think there was someone saying something that was a little inappropriate, and she was like, I heard you say that. So anyway, the point is that there are these phenomena, and either they're all lying, getting together, creating a club, and agreeing on saying something similar, or there's something to it. There really is something to it. That the mind can exist independent of the brain, especially a very subtle mind. Therefore, that and so many other aspects, of course, as well. If you think back when you were very little, you had certain preferences, likes and dislikes, that no one in your family had, and you don't know where it comes from. Or you meet people that for no reason you're scared of. Or you meet people you know you're going to marry one day. But I usually say jokingly, I say there's no love on first sight. You probably were together with them in your previous life, and you're just reconnecting, right? You may have been married with someone in a previous life, and then you meet them again. The karma has not been exhausted to be with that person, so you're again with them, and maybe you're married 3-4 times. Many of the karmas that we continue from one life to the next, many of them continue for some time, right? Over a few lifetimes. You have the karma to be with one person for more than one life. And when you meet them for the second time, after already spending, 60 years with them, it's like, oh, I'm going to marry them. Yeah, you know them so well, so you reconnect. Possible. Or you had some trouble with a person in a previous life, and then you see them this life and you're scared of them. For no reason. No one else feels that way. Actually, there is someone. When I first became a nun, there was a nun I was so scared of. No one ever has said they were scared. Whenever I shared it with someone, you don't know her, but there's a nun, and you don't know her either, I don't think. But this nun, I was scared of her. I don't know why. I have no idea. I'm no longer scared of her, but I used to be the first time I saw her. So I don't know. What is that? If you're Israeli, you have the Druze, right? The Druze community. I've heard that there was a murder case that was solved because a child remembered a previous life. Because in the Druze community, they do believe in reincarnation to a certain degree. I mean, I think they believe you're reincarnated as a human. And sometimes children remember, and parents don't say, rubbish, what are you saying? They believe it, and they maybe follow these stories. And what I heard from an Israeli friend, she said it was in the newspaper. I don't know which newspaper, probably Haaretz. It's the one I remember. No, I don't know which newspaper. But anyway, it was in one of the newspapers. It was saying that this boy remembered his previous life, and he said, I was murdered in my previous life. I was murdered, and I want to go home. And he kept talking about being murdered, being hit over the head with an axe or something. And so no one knew. So anyway, he slowly started talking about where he came from, what his name was, and his family started investigating. And they found out there was, in fact, a young person, a young man, and he disappeared one day. No one knew where he was. And I think his family thought he wandered into Syria and disappeared, right? I think that's how I remember it. So anyway, here's this little boy, and he says, no, I was killed. And he took his parents, and maybe by that time the police as well, and said, I'm buried here. So they dug into the ground, and they found a corpse with someone who had been hit over the head, and maybe the murder weapon right there. And they were like, oops, how did you know? And they're like, well, that was me. I was there. So then he was like, well, who murdered you? And he took them to the house of the person who'd murdered him, and they went there. And he was like, do you know this boy? He's like, no. Well, you murdered him. And he's like, and it was like, well, did you? And in the end, the person, like, they took off. They were like so spooked. This guy apparently tried to run off. And then it was obvious there was something with him, and they were able, he eventually confessed that he had murdered that person. And this child came back to say, well, that's what happened to me. There are so many stories. I have a newspaper cut out from an Indian newspaper where a little boy remembered his previous life. And since it's India, yeah, sure, he remembered his previous life. So let's investigate. There was a little boy who kept saying, I want to go home. I want to go home to my family. And when he was old enough, the parents decided, let's do it. And he was always really scared of tractors. So like tractors, he was petrified of them. But other than that, he was just a normal little boy. And he said, I live in this village, and this is, let's go there. And he really wanted to go home, and he did. They took him to this village. And there was like this little shed, with the shutters down. And he said, this is where my father lives. That's where my father works. So they asked, and they said, no, there's no one there. Well, then they asked again, was there someone who used to be there? And they said, yeah, there was a tailor. But he was heartbroken when his son got killed by a tractor. He was 7 years old, and he no longer worked, and he eventually died. So he's like, yep, that's my father. And they went home to where he said his home was, and he recognized the family members. This is my mom, this is my sister. I think the father had passed away, and they had lost their boy in a tractor accident, right? And so then there's a picture of the mother of the previous life with a photograph of the boy from the previous life and the boy in this life. And they're even a little similar. They look a little bit alike. Except the boy from the previous life had like in the Sikh tradition, like little boys have already like almost like a handkerchief, So he had that. That was the boy in the previous life, and the boy in this life didn't have that, but they looked very similar. What is this? What is this? And my stepbrother, I'm very close to my stepbrother and his wife. They once came to visit me here. And they wanted to get pregnant, but couldn't become pregnant. So I went to one incredible Lama, Jadu Rinpoche. We went together. He was here, and we went to see him, and said, Rinpoche, what can be done that they get pregnant? And Rinpoche told them to do certain things, and they did it. They're not Buddhists, they're not interested, but they did it. They wanted to get pregnant no matter what. And then, sure enough, a year later, they had a little girl. Now, what did they call her, the girl? Milla. That's Milarepa. But they had no idea that that's a very auspicious name. And they brought her here, actually. They brought her here. She was here when she was 2 years old. And that's it. I didn't give it much. I thought Milla, that's just a coincidence, Milla. When people ask, what's your name? Milla. And they're like, oh, Milla. Because Tibetans call Milarepa Milla. And he was like, whoa, that's amazing. But I didn't think so much about it. And I was like, okay, great. Nice girl, and that's it. But she was little. And then, when she was about 5 years old, she was in the kitchen of my stepma, her grandmother. And then there was a brush, a hairbrush, and she said, I used to have one like that when I was big. When I was big, when I was a big person, she said, when I was a big person, I had one of those. And I was like, oh. I said, when was that? And she's like, I'm not really sure. That's all she said. That's all she said. But this is a lot, I've heard this a lot, like from other people as well, when children say, yeah, when I was big at that time. So this is only up to the age of 5 or 6, and then these memories go away. But I've heard it from so many people. So this was just a little thing, and my grandmother was right away, no, stop it, like asked her to stop it, because she knew what I was doing. And I never addressed it again. But now that she's like 12 or 13, she's honestly a really pleasant girl. She's this kind of person, whenever she meets you, she walks up to you and she says, how are you? How are you doing? This is quite unusual for children at that age. And I don't think her parents have taught her that. She's got that really calm presence. She goes up to you and she talks to you in a very nice way and then says goodbye. And she does that whoever she knows. I've noticed just recently, and she's a very calm kind of person, doesn't speak much, a little shy, doesn't talk much. But I'm wondering whether that's something to do that this girl is special. I'm curious what's going to happen in the future. Yeah, I could be just making it all up, but there's just a few things about her, and these are the ones I remember. So there's so many, if you pay attention, there's so many situations. And of course, then there's the University of Virginia. Have you heard of what's happening at the University of Virginia? Ian Stevenson? And now what's the name of the guy who took over? Ian Stevenson passed away. The university have this branch where they investigate past lives. That's just what they do. So Ian Stevenson was a professor there, and there were a lot of cases, even in the US, where children remember previous lives, and they investigated that. And they found some eerie stuff, some amazing things. So that's like, there's a whole book about it. And then another person took over, and again, was a part of that university. And they're not religiously influenced or anything. It's like, they say, it doesn't matter for us, we just investigate this phenomenon. That's all we do, right? But the stories are incredible. Yeah. So if you have an interest in that, sometimes anecdotal evidence, so it's not real evidence, but it can be really convincing. It can really give us a sense, yeah, maybe I lived before. It would explain a few things, my dislikes and likes and fears when I was a child, that none of my sibling didn't have. Okay, so having said all that, now I gave you a long explanation on all that, but I think it's helpful, it's really helpful. And if you're interested in that, well, there's so much you can find now on YouTube. You can find online documentaries. There's really a lot of material. Books are available. Yeah. With near-death experiences being also very, very helpful, plus reincarnation. Anyway, taking that into consideration, so we've lived before, and we lived before that, and we lived before that, well, there's no beginning. Since beginningless time, which means we have had any relationship with everyone. There's no relationship we didn't have with others, right? We've been everything to everyone. I mean, logically, it doesn't make sense, because since beginningless time, over and over, we've been enemies, we've been close, we've been this, that, and the other. So every living being, basically. There was no time for anything not to happen, because it has been since beginningless time. And yet they argue, and this is difficult for us in some cultures, everyone has at some point been our mother. So at a time when we were still very close to our mothers, this was very effective. But that's no longer true. Remember, in the morning I spoke about it, like we blame our parents, and oftentimes we have difficult relationships with our mothers, which, like I said, in Tibetan society, this is a very strange phenomenon. Very strange. Even when my mother comes here, when my mom is with younger people, like my sister and her children and their boyfriends, no, there's only one boy who has a girlfriend, so no boyfriends yet, but girlfriends. So they ignore my mom. They pretty much ignore her, because she's old and, they don't know what to do. But when my mom comes here with the nuns, she's the center of attention. She loves it here. I mean, obviously, because people don't ignore her. That would be considered disrespectful. That would be rude, right? She's very much part of it. It's very beautiful how they include her. There's this natural respect. It's not fake. There's real respect, but also a care, a kind of affection towards this person who's, well, elderly, old, to be truthful. She's 87, so that's not elderly, that's old. She's 87, right? So the thing is, therefore, in the West, that's our problem, that we lost our respect for elder people, for older people. We did, unfortunately. And it's terrible to be old in the West. It's really hard. I mean, I hate it. When I go to see my mom, I go to see a doctor with my mom about an issue my mom has, and they look at me and not at my mom. I look away. It annoys me so much that I start going. So they have to look at my mom, right? I hate it. They don't. And my mom actually is very, you know, she has no issues. Like she hears well. She has some hearing aid, but with that she hears well. And she's fit, and she understands everything they're saying. She reacts in the appropriate way. There is no reason not to talk to her. She's just like a normal person. And still, they don't take her for full. They look at me. I want to say to them sometimes, I don't have the guts to do that, it's still a doctor, but, like, look at my mom. All I do is just look away, so they have to look at her or start, like, doing something. It's terrible. That's what happens in the West. Yeah. Anyway, the point is we have already this issue, and then with our mothers anyway. But this meditation is difficult for a lot of people, therefore. But I think, especially if it's difficult, we need to do it. Everything that is difficult, we need to do. We need to deal with it, because there's something not right. But in the meantime, without dealing with the mother issue, we could say everyone has been extremely close to us in another way. If it's your best friend forever, whatever, well, not forever in this case, I guess, but in any case. But yeah, like thinking they were your extremely close friend in a previous life, so your best friend, they did everything for you. And in that way to think, everyone has been so close to us. Isn't that incredible to think about it? Everyone is a stranger. No, everyone is a close friend that I've forgotten that they were. No, I didn't put that very elegantly, but you know what I mean, right? It's a potential friend, of course, a future friend, but not just that. Has been at some point so super close to us, and now we don't remember. If you have children, you could even think every living being has been your child. Every living being has been your child. Again and again and again. To you, the most important person once in the world. Right? Isn't that absurd when we think about it? So it's like there's this one life, and I'm forever a child of my parents, and I'm forever a sibling of my sister. I'm forever a woman. I'm forever this. No, just for a short time. I was everything else before. So when you really start thinking about it, so think in your mind, widen your perspective. Take off those blinders, I'm saying it right now. So take up these, and think, I've lived before, and in this life I've done something else, and again and again. Then it's like, this life is not as solid and as concrete as it seems. I may identify so strongly with being a woman, but maybe I was a man for the last 10 lifetimes, right? I may identify so strongly with being German, but maybe I was, I don't know, a dog for the last few lifetimes, right? Or a Chinese person, or what have you. I don't know. Yeah. So my strong sense of who I am, it's just for a short time. And my parents were my children at some point. They were my enemies. They were my pets. They were my, anything. First of all, that already gives a sense of, it kind of like you can let go of our sense of who I am right now. Right? If you imagine it like a movie, go back, go back, go back. It'd be great if we had some pastime memories. That would definitely help. That's what really annoys me about reincarnation. That's what really annoys me. Why can't we remember? If we could, I wouldn't make the same mistakes again and again and again. But then again, it would be so frustrating to find yourself again lying there, not being able to move, not being able to talk, and having to learn it all over again. I guess I'd kill myself as a baby. Hunger strike, I've got enough. No, honestly, if we think about it, really I truly believe in reincarnation now. And initially I didn't. Initially, you want to laugh? I came to McLeod, and my mom, when I was a teenager, she did like past life regression. That annoyed me so much. Other siblings thought that was cool. It annoyed me to pieces. Especially she was always a princess. She was always someone important. To come home with these stupid stories, I hated it. You know, I was a rebellious teenager and I really didn't like it. And I was like, don't talk to me about this. I don't like this. This is all rubbish. I didn't believe it. So she gave up on trying to convince me. And when I came to McLeod, people were Buddhist and they talk about reincarnation. And I was like, I'm not going to believe in reincarnation. I won't. This is bullshit. You know, sorry. Should be like, beep, no. This is all rubbish. That doesn't make any sense. There's no scientific basis for it. So for the longest time, I'd actually decided not to believe in reincarnation. In fact, I came for all the wrong reasons to McLeod. I was in Manali, and someone told me about McLeod and said, oh, McLeod is incredible. The Dalai Lama lives there, the Tibetans live there, and they have incredible chocolate cake. And I was like, I don't know who the Dalai Lama is, I don't know about the Tibetans, but chocolate cake, that's tempting. That's why I came here. No visions and dreams and spiritual intuition, nope, chocolate cake. That's why I came here. So, and then I decided I'm not going to believe in reincarnation. This is so, oh, my mom, we're going back to that time. No, I don't like that. And the first monk I saw, as I told you, made me so angry. Western monk, not Tibetan monks. They could look Tibetan, that was fine. But a Westerner who dresses like a Tibetan, I thought that was embarrassing. And it really made me angry. I had a great start. But the point is that initially, I didn't like it. I didn't think reincarnation made any sense. But now, it doesn't make any other sense. It doesn't make sense that it's anything else, to me, right? It really, and it's very interesting because I told you about this documentary by an American called Eber. Forget his name now, I have to look him up. Years ago, I listened to his, not podcast, but it was like a YouTube video. Can't find the same video now, but it's about this neuroscientist who was very traditional neuroscientist. Mind is a product, the side product of the brain. There is no mind really, it's all brain, right? Very strong view on that. Until one day he developed meningitis. And he fell into a coma. So the family was informed that he would probably die. They already gave up, basically. And for 7 days, he was in a coma. And when he awoke, he said, there's mind, and it's different from brain. Because he had very incredible experiences. He had very, he's still a Christian, so he's never changed his religion, but he said he's convinced there's reincarnation. He said when you look in the earlier Christian scriptures, it mentions reincarnation, that was part of it. I've heard that as well, but I've not heard it from him. But the other day I listened to one of his talks again, and the scientific community is really upset with him that he makes these statements. But he said it was so vivid. He had no sense of time. He had no sense of, he didn't even have any language. Language was lost in that moment. He didn't know who he was. None of that. But he had incredible experiences while his brain wasn't as active as his mind was. There was some activity, of course. He wasn't brain dead. So the point is, therefore, it makes perfect sense to me, but never mind, it doesn't need to make sense to you. But if you just visualize this, then it helps us to not hold on so much to who we are now, but allow more possibilities. I think just that is helpful. But then, if we've really existed since beginning this time, everyone has been extremely close to us. Everyone has been so close to us. Everyone has been our mothers, in the sense, well, maybe if we have a hard time with our mother in this life, that's also a way to do it. Think of the perfect mother. Everyone has been that, right? Totally sacrificing all her happiness for you, sacrificing her health, sacrificing her well-being, everything, just for you to be happy. I mean, this is really interesting, the love of parents. It's the greatest, what is Holmes usually calls, the Dalai Lama usually calls, the greatest love that is like a biological love that is the most similar aspect when it comes to the love in Buddhism. So this kind of unconditional love. Parents love their children unconditionally. And it's not just mothers. I guess it's those 8-9 months they carry them around and the hardship, the physical hardship. So mothers are mentioned, but of course dads should be mentioned in the same way. And there are oftentimes. They say pama, which means parents. And then just doing everything for us and still loving us, even if we turn out to be serial killers. Right? Oftentimes, when there's like a convicted killer, someone who's killed a lot of people, who's done terrible things, and there's a courtroom with all the families of the victims, like huge groups, and then there's one person on the side of the serial killer. That's oftentimes their parents. No friends left. The rest of the family doesn't want anything to do with them. But they're their parents. They can't give up their child. They still love their child unconditionally. Isn't that incredible? That is, from an ordinary point of view, that is really amazing. So think that everyone in this universe has loved you in that way endless times. Logically, if there's reincarnation, the thing is, one of the main logics of reincarnation is that a mind cannot be created by something that is not a mind. Right? That is usually the logic. I gave you anecdotes, but a mind cannot be created by something that is not mind. Just as matter cannot be created by something that is not matter. Something physical must be preceded by something physical. It goes both ways. Mind cannot create matter. Mind cannot transform and become matter in that way. Or matter cannot transform and become mind. So therefore, what is the first moment of mind? You can't posit a first moment because there must have been a previous moment as part of the same continuum. And my mental continuum is not yours. I am not the continuation of my parents' mental continuum. That would be ludicrous. I should have a part of my parents' minds. I mean, there should be a lot more similarities, and they're often not there. Of course, some are through the DNA we got from our parents. There are definitely some mental things you can see in identical twins, even if they're raised apart. Sometimes, I've heard the other day about identical twins, they were separated at birth because they were given up for adoption and were therefore separated. And they met again many years later, but as it turned out, they had an appendix operation at the same time. They got married at the same time. Both of their wives were called Lisa. There were some weird coincidences. So the Lisa thing may be just really coincidence, because it's not like you have a DNA, I want my wife to be called Lisa. But no, but there were some interesting aspects about their likes and dislikes, so many similarities, although they had never met. And when they met, they exchanged stories and they realized, wow. So that's pretty much, I think, it's DNA. I guess we could say it's DNA. But maybe it's also karmic connections. Maybe it's also karmic connections. Who knows? But when it comes to the external, yes, it's the DNA. But why did we get those chromosomes? Why did we get these chromosomes and no others? Oh, that's just random. For some reason, In some cases, we believe in causes and conditions all the way, but when it comes to that, the kind of DNA we got, that's random. No reason. Not very consistent. But anyway, the point is that, what is the point? Yeah, I said something before that. What was the last thing I wanted to? Reincarnation, of course.
Mind is a cause for mind.
Pardon?
Mind is a cause for mind.
Yes, that's right, thank you. Yes, so mind has to be the substantial cause that transforms into mind, which is why there is no beginning to a mental continuum. That's the logic behind saying you can't posit a beginning. And that's also true for physical matter. So when we say the Big Bang is the beginning of material objects, that mustn't make sense. And I don't think every scientist would agree with that. You must have at least something else physical. You can't have something physical out of nothing. At least some energy, and that's still physical. So before the Big Bang, you had at least energy. And before that, there was something else, and before that. Therefore, there's not even a beginning to matter. And matter and mind interact, but they're not the same. Therefore, mind must have existed since beginningless time. And since we've existed in different forms, we've been everything to everyone. But we just don't remember. We don't remember that all of you were once so close to me. You were so kind to me. You did everything for me. Yeah, you were my parents and it was your duty, duh. That's what we say in the West. It's your job. But once you become a parent, I don't think you feel that way. It's my job. It's like, I don't even get paid. If it was my job, at least I had a salary. No, the thing is, we have that thing that parents have to do that. But, you know, there are some parents who don't do it, unfortunately, who, for whatever reason, can't really bond with their children. And then it becomes very, very traumatic for the child. But the thing is, since everyone has been our mother limitless times, there were definitely some pretty good versions of them. So we focus on them. No one is a stranger. Everyone is someone who's really close to us, and we just don't remember them. Isn't that a beautiful thought? Everyone has been once so close to us. We were in their bellies. We were in the belly of every single person. They carried us around for 9 months. Or maybe sometimes only 4 weeks if we were in the belly of a dog. But we don't just talk about human. But usually humans are pretty good at being, you know, they have to look after us for longer than dogs do, for instance. But in every form. Incredible, right? Think. Everyone has been so incredibly close to us. So kind to us. Does that make sense to a little, or you, be honest, think, I just want to get a sense of your opinion on that. Some find it harder and some don't, but yeah. Everyone, every living being, every insect, every single living being, everyone.
I'm not getting the difference between related and close, because I don't feel close with everyone right now.
No, exactly.
Not in the past, maybe.
Yes, we were close. No, right now. But you see, the argument here is we were very close in the past. So why not now? Why not? You see, if you were really, really close to someone in the beginning of your life, there's still some connection you have with them, right? When you were 5 years old, best friend did everything for you, and then somehow things happened, they moved away, and you meet them again, there's still that closeness, right? Yeah, there's still that sense, whoa, yeah? And in the same way, if we've realized we were really, really close once to everyone, let's rekindle that. Let's rekindle that. And not just that, remember what they've done for us and generate the sense, now it's the time for me to do something. Now, maybe I can repay that kindness now. Maybe there's something I can do. So it's kind of like we want to bring this closeness towards others, like what is the technique? What are mental technique, psychological techniques to bring about this closeness, which is totally possible because the Buddha has it towards all of us. Some of the great lamas have it towards all of us. So it's possible, but it doesn't just pop up on its own. Therefore, what do we need? Techniques such as this, which is not unrealistic. From a Buddhist point of view, this is totally realistic, except we don't remember. But big deal, I don't remember what I had for breakfast last Friday. So just remembering doesn't mean it didn't happen. I don't remember when I was born, and it still happened, right? Therefore, to get that closeness, whenever you look at someone, to get that sense, oh, they were my mother once. But of course, it's important to have also a sense of closeness towards your mother, right? Like a sense of, okay, she made mistakes, yes, stuff went wrong, but she was also really kind. Think of yourself as a 5-year-old. Weren't you in love with your mother? I wanted to marry my mother when I was 11. Until my mom showed me these kind of sticky notes when I wrote, one day I will marry you. I had some weird ideas of what marriage meant, but I loved my mom so much, I wanted to marry her. And so she kept the paper until I was 13, 14 when I changed my mind. And she's like, you still? And it's like, Mom, you're so annoying.
Sigmund Freud too far, I guess.
Pardon?
Took Sigmund Freud too far.
Huh?
Sigmund Freud also said similar things, that we had that feeling towards our parents, that we want to marry our parents.
You want to, yeah, you had that as well?
No, like Sigmund Freud said the same thing.
Who said the same?
Freud.
Freud, oh my God, no, it becomes some kind of, what is it, neurosis or something. No, but it wasn't anything like creepy or something. It was just I loved my mom so much, you know, like I just wanted to always be with her. So my mom not there, it felt really, dad for that matter. Somehow, actually I was closer to my dad, to be honest. My sister as well, because my father was this kind of laid back, funny, super cool, we could do everything kind of guy. My mom wasn't like that. We couldn't always do everything. So we loved him for that a lot. But still, there was this closeness to my mom. Yeah, my parents both. I loved them so much, right? And then as a teenager, it stopped. Do you remember that time? Is there anyone who didn't feel this incredible closeness? Did you feel close to your parents when you were very little? Not at all? In no way at all? Your dad? Okay, dead. That is fine. One is okay. Yeah, okay. And sometimes we may not even remember when we were 2 or 3 years old. My first memories were when I was 4, so I don't even remember how I felt when I was 2 or 3. But maybe, yeah, it didn't happen. It's possible it didn't happen. But, and surely my mom was also sometimes really cruel. She was obsessed with having everything clean. And when we didn't clean, she would go into my room and throw everything from the cupboard. That's so mean. Everything. She would just go, open the cupboard and throw everything outside. She was really mean sometimes. But she was also really kind at other times. So there was that meanness, but there was also the kindness. And especially later on, she mellowed and she changed. But the point is, it's not about that. She could have been anyone. I would have loved her, right? At some point, we all love our parents. And there's that closeness, yeah.
So when you talk about closeness, you're opening doors to the good as well as the bad, right? It's easier to rejoice, but when the annoying things come up, you really don't want to be close, right? So what do you think about that?
All right, we open ourselves to the good and the bad. That is true. Oh yeah, you made that point before and I never addressed it. But yes, we open ourselves to the bad as well. But the thing is, it wasn't because I was close to her so much. She would have done it to anyone, I guess, if they lived in her house. So I don't have the sense that she only did it to us because we were her children. She just wanted to have it tidy. And she would have been arrested if she'd done it with the neighbors, so she didn't do that. And sometimes, of course, yeah, we were when she was, she was moody, etc. But the thing is, because of this closeness, we can also forgive them. And it can be in such a way that we can forgive that, especially when we have children on our own, we understand where it comes from. Like sometimes we need to just understand why they were like that. Where were they coming from? Their insecurities, their fears, their inability to bear disarray. I'm thinking of people with OCD. Right? This is terrible. Like what I know, the little one that I know, I like to read about it sometimes or watch documentaries about it. Like this is so hard for them not to do certain things. It's so important for them to do, certain things 3 times or what have you. And then I can forgive my mom now. I mean, but I'm thinking it was really important to her. She just couldn't bear it. And she felt the only way to discipline us was that way. She was raised in a way where discipline, I mean, she got, a bit of beating from her parents, big time from her dad. She loved her dad and her mom, but she was beaten a lot. That was just part of the culture then. And I guess she just passed that on. So I can forgive her. I mean, nowadays, sometimes maybe it comes up or something, and she always apologizes for it. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry what I did. And I'm like, no, you're a good mom. We all make mistakes. Yeah, but the thing is, we need to see the whole picture. And you remember the thing I told you about the near-death experiences that I just recently been watching on YouTube, like different people sharing their experience? I never knew that, or I never paid enough attention. But the thing that so many people report, that when they have these experiences and they have this past life, this life review, they kind of go through their life, and when something happened to them, someone did them some injustice and really hurt them, many of them talked about reliving that moment. Many of them talking about reliving that moment, but this time from a different perspective. So a few cases that I watched was saying it was incredible that they experienced the hurt again, but this time they didn't feel hurt. Instead, they got the perspective from the other person. They got a sense of where's the other person coming from, and it was understanding. Or in those cases where there was something terrible that they'd done to someone, maybe hurt someone greatly, they understood what it felt for them. And when the interviewer, when they asked, like, do you still feel that way? They say, absolutely, it hasn't left me. Either I've been able to forgive that person, or it's giving me the opportunity to make amends, right? They rise from that, and they realize, oh my God, I hurt that person. I really understand how they felt. So then once they arise from that near-death experience, they want to make amends. I'm thinking these people are lucky they had near-death experiences, because their whole life...
Shall we take a break?
Yeah, good time. Their whole lives have changed, but let's take a break.